Imagine for a moment that your mind is not the fixed, unchangeable entity you've been taught to believe in, but rather a vast and shifting landscape, one that can be rewired, reshaped, and remade in mere minutes. What if the walls of your perception, the grooves of your habitual thinking, the very architecture of your reality, could be altered with nothing more than a 10-minute encounter with a single video? This is not science fiction, nor is it hyperbole. It is the provocative promise of, this video will rewire your brain in 10 minutes. Try it at your own risk. A digital incantation designed to bypass the slow, lumbering machinery of conventional self-improvement and plunge you directly into the molten core of transformation. The title alone is a dare, a gauntlet thrown at the feet of skepticism. Try it at your own risk. A warning or an invitation. The mind recoils at the idea that something as mundane as a video could wield such power. And yet, we live in an age where the boundaries between technology and consciousness blur daily. Neuroscientists speak of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself. But what if that plasticity could be triggered not through years of meditation or therapy, but through a precisely engineered sequence of images, sounds, and subliminal cues? What if the right stimulus, delivered at the right frequency, could act as a psychic scalpel, cutting through the tangled webs of conditioned thought and revealing, if only for a moment, the raw potential beneath? This is not merely about self-help or fleeting motivation. It is about the hidden levers of perception, the ones that, when pulled, reveal that reality itself is a construct, shaped and reshaped by the mind's interpretations. Ancient mystics spoke of instant enlightenment, moments where the veil was torn away in a flash. Modern science speaks of rapid cognitive restructuring, where trauma patterns dissolve in a single therapeutic session. This video exists at the intersection of those two truths, the esoteric and the empirical, the mystical and the measurable. But be warned, to rewire the brain is to dance with chaos. The ego clings to its familiar patterns like a drowning man to driftwood. What happens when those patterns are disrupted? Who are you when the old scripts dissolve before the new ones have fully formed? The risk is not merely that the video might fail, but that it might succeed too well, leaving you stranded between identities, between worlds. Yet for those brave enough to press play, the reward is a glimpse behind the curtain, proof that the mind is not a prison but a workshop. And the tools for its redesign are already in your hands. The promise of rewiring your brain in minutes rests on three seismic truths. Concepts so foundational that to grasp them is to hold the keys to your own transformation. Like invisible currents beneath the ocean's surface, these principles dictate how perception solidifies into reality, and how, with the right intervention, that reality can be liquefied anew. Neuroplasticity as alchemy. For centuries, we believed the brain was static, a carved stone monument to genetics and early experience. Modern neuroscience shattered that illusion, revealing instead a living forge where neural pathways dissolve and reform in response to focus, trauma, or even a single electrifying insight. The brain is not hardware. It is mutable clay. This video operates on the radical edge of that discovery, leveraging stimuli designed to collapse old pathways like controlled demolitions while simultaneously blueprinting new ones. The implications are staggering. What if anxiety, self-doubt, or creative blocks weren't life sentences but mere configurations, patterns awaiting a catalyst to rearrange them? The Trojan horse of subliminal influence. Conscious resistance is the guardian at the gate of change. But what if the gates could be bypassed entirely? The video's power lies in its ability to speak directly to the subconscious, the ancient, wordless part of the mind that governs instinct, emotion, and automatic behaviors. Through binaural beats, rapid imagery, or linguistic patterns that evade critical analysis, it plants seeds beneath the surface of awareness. Like a hypnotist's pendulum or a shaman's drum, it induces a trance, not of sleep, but of hyper-receptivity. Here the usual defenses are down. Here, transformation doesn't need to argue its case. It simply takes root. The risk of unfinished metamorphosis. But speed has a shadow. When a caterpillar dissolves in its chrysalis, there is a liquid phase where it is neither larva nor butterfly, only raw potential. The brain, too, has such a phase during rapid rewiring. This is the video's true warning. That to disrupt deep neural patterns without immediate reinforcement is to risk a liminal state where old coping mechanisms have vanished, but new ones aren't yet operational. Some report euphoric clarity. Others, temporary disorientation as the mind recalibrates. The danger isn't in the change itself, but in the unpreparedness of the traveler. Underlying these themes is a fourth, unspoken pillar: the illusion of incrementalism. We're taught growth must be slow, that wisdom comes drop by drop. Yet history's greatest leaps, scientific, artistic, spiritual, often arrived in flashes. This video is a modern-day lightning strike, a deliberate confrontation with the possibility that who you are is not who you must remain. Consider the ancient parable of the golden mask, a story whispered in esoteric circles about a sculptor who became trapped inside his own creation. For years, he hammered at gold leaf, shaping a face so lifelike that admirers would gasp at its radiance. One morning, as he polished the mask's brow, his reflection merged with the gold. Fingers froze mid-stroke. Breath stilled. The artisan had become the artifact, his consciousness now bound within the very thing he'd forged. Centuries passed before a thunderstorm cracked the mask open, revealing the man inside. Not aged, not starved, but transformed. His eyes holding knowledge no mortal should possess. This myth mirrors the video's hidden function. You are both the sculptor and the gold. Your habitual thoughts, those repetitive loops of worry, ambition, and memory, have over time electroplated your mind's architecture. The video acts as the lightning strike, fracturing the gilded cage so you can step outside it. But here lies the peril the title hints at. Once seen, certain truths cannot be unseen. Like the sculptor, you may find yourself straddling two worlds: the old reality where time feels linear and identity solid, and a new one where you witness your own mind as a shape-shifting phenomenon. Another layer emerges in the Buddhist tale of the hungry ghost, a wraith with a distended belly and throat no thicker than a needle, eternally starving yet unable to digest. Modern neuroscience identifies its counterpart in default mode network dysfunction, where the brain endlessly replays lack without satiation. The video's binaural pulses and pattern interrupts mimic the Zen master's kaisuku stick, a sharp strike to the shoulders that shatters compulsive thinking. Yet liberation demands more than disruption. It requires realignment. This is why some report visceral resistance mid-video, as if something primal senses the coming death of its familiar famine. Perhaps most revealing is the Gnostic myth of the archons, interdimensional parasites said to feed on human unconsciousness. They thrive when minds run predictable loops, their sustenance drawn from fear's circadian rhythms. The video then becomes an act of rebellion. Its flickering frames and discordant tones form a mirror to reveal these mental parasites, dissolving their camouflage. What viewers describe as weird energy or sudden clarity may be the shudder of a collapsing control system, one that mistook your neurons for its territory. These narratives converge on a single truth: the brain's wiring is not just biology, but mythology in action. To rewire it is to engage in a hero's journey where you play both dragon and knight. The true test of any transformation lies not in the moment of revelation, but in how it echoes through the mundane corridors of daily life. Having glimpsed the mutability of your own mind through the video's alchemical process, you now stand at the threshold where cosmic insight meets concrete application. This is where the rubber meets the road, where neural fireworks must translate into tangible shifts in perception, behavior, and interaction. Imagine your newly rewired consciousness as a radio that has suddenly gained access to previously unavailable frequencies. Where once you could only receive the static-filled broadcasts of societal conditioning and habitual reactions, now you detect subtler channels: the quiet hum of intuition, the clear signal of present-moment awareness, the occasional burst of transcendent insight. The challenge becomes learning to tune this instrument deliberately, rather than letting it drift back to old, familiar stations out of muscle memory. Consider the implications for decision-making. Where previously you might have agonized over choices, caught in paralyzing loops of pros and cons, your rewired brain accesses information holographically. A business decision becomes less about linear analysis and more about sensing the energetic architecture of possible outcomes. Relationship conflicts transform from battles to be won into dynamic systems to be navigated with emotional fluidity. Even simple acts like commuting to work become opportunities to observe how your perception actively constructs the reality streaming through your senses. The workplace becomes a particularly fascinating testing ground for your new neural flexibility. Colleagues who once triggered automatic reactions now appear as complex energy patterns you can choose to engage with or let pass. Tasks that used to induce stress now unfold as sequences of creative challenges. You might find yourself solving problems through unconventional connections that leave coworkers mystified at your sudden creativity spikes. The key lies in maintaining what we might call plasticity hygiene, daily practices that prevent the new neural pathways from reverting to their old rigid formations. Perhaps most profoundly, your relationship with time undergoes a radical shift. The video's temporal compression of transformation, 10 minutes that alter your brain, serves as a constant reminder that time's flow is more subjective than absolute. Deadlines become fluid constructs, productivity transforms into presence, and the artificial divide between work time and personal time dissolves into a unified field of conscious experience. You begin to notice how much of your stress originated not from actual events, but from the mental scaffolding you had built around them. The real-world implications extend into your physical environment. As your perception shifts, so does your interaction with space. You might find yourself rearranging your living or working space intuitively, creating configurations that support rather than constrain your new mental patterns. Objects take on different meanings. Where once you saw a cluttered desk, you now perceive energy blockages. Where once you tolerated harsh lighting, you now instinctively soften your visual field to maintain optimal cognitive states. Social dynamics reveal their hidden architecture with new clarity. You detect the unconscious scripts governing conversations, the subtle power plays masquerading as casual banter, the hidden bids for validation disguised as opinions. This awareness doesn't make you withdrawn. Rather, it allows you to engage more authentically, choosing which games to play consciously rather than being drafted into them unaware. Your relationships either deepen significantly or fall away naturally, as your rewired brain no longer tolerates connections based on old, inauthentic patterns. Financial behaviors transform as your new neural pathways bypass previous scarcity programming. Money flows differently when you stop seeing it as a limited commodity and start recognizing it as an energy current you can learn to navigate. Investment decisions gain a multidimensional quality, factoring in not just financial returns but energetic and ethical resonances. Even daily purchases become conscious choices rather than automatic behaviors. The most crucial real-world application, however, lies in your moment-to-moment awareness. With your brain's filters temporarily down and its pathways freshly malleable, you have a unique opportunity to reprogram your most fundamental operating system. The one that decides what you notice, what you ignore, and how you interpret the constant stream of sensory data we call reality. This is where true freedom lies. Not in changing circumstances, but in changing how your consciousness engages with them. You stand now at the edge of revelation, not as a passive witness, but as an active participant in the greatest experiment of all, the reinvention of your own mind. The video was never just a sequence of images and sounds. It was a mirror held up to the most fundamental truth of human existence, that reality is not something you perceive, but something you create moment by moment, synapse by synapse. This is the hidden invitation beneath the warning, to recognize that your brain is not a static organ but a living loom, weaving and unweaving the fabric of your experience with every thought, every belief, every repeated pattern. The risk was never about danger. It was about responsibility. Once you know you can rewire yourself, you can never again claim to be the victim of your own mind. The chains were always made of smoke. You simply needed to see the wind. So what now? The real work begins when the video ends. Like a blacksmith pulling molten iron from the forge, you have a brief window where your consciousness remains malleable. This is when you must strike. Reclaim your attention, the most valuable currency in an age of distraction. Notice what you feed your mind, for it will inevitably shape the world you perceive. Question your reflexes, those automatic reactions that feel like you, but are merely echoes of old programming. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies your power. Create deliberate patterns. Neurons that fire together wire together. What thoughts do you want to bind? What behaviors deserve to become your new defaults? Embrace the discomfort of growth. A rewired brain is not a perfected one, but an adaptable one. Uncertainty is the price of expansion. The video was a catalyst, but the true alchemy happens in the choices that follow. You are neither the thoughts you think nor the habits you've accumulated. You are the awareness that observes them, the consciousness that can choose to reshape them. This is the ultimate rebellion in a world that profits from your autopilot existence. To wake up not just once but constantly. To dissolve the old versions of yourself before they crystallize into prisons. To treat your mind not as a fixed entity, but as a work of art in progress, one you can remold daily. The invitation stands. The tools are in your hands. The only question left is, what will you choose to build?